I never thought that an ordinary day with my family could change everything. That familiar warmth I'd grown up with, the laughter of my sister, the constant hum from the kitchen, the soft golden light spilling through the windows, suddenly became the backdrop for a storm I never saw coming. That day was special. My sister, Lynn, was about to get engaged to a young man named Min. He wasn't a stranger to the family. We'd known him for about a year, and from the first meeting I knew he was different. Not in an obvious, flashy way, but quietly pious, gentle, charming, with a hint of mystery that drew people in. He smiled at everyone, joined the conversation, but sometimes his eyes would drift as if he was somewhere else, somewhere only he could see. I remember that morning vividly. Walking into my parents' spacious living room, everything seemed perfectly prepared. Mum was in the kitchen, moving deftly in a soft yellow dress, pots clanging gently, the aroma of roast meat and sautéed vegetables filling the air. Dad sat at the long dining table, scanning the newspaper, occasionally chuckling at an old story about us kids. My younger brother Nam and his wife Thao were laughing and chatting, their voices filling the room like music. I stood near the window, sipping tea, feeling a mix of excitement and unease, because I knew today would be important. Lynn appeared in a soft pink dress, hair loose and natural, her eyes sparkling but tinged with nerves. She walked toward Min, smiling gently, hands finding his. Min took her hand, returning a warm smile, but there was that trace of hesitation in his gaze, like he was holding something back. Watching them, my heart felt both happy for my sister and unsettled in a way I couldn't quite explain. The morning moved slowly, in that familiar rhythm, but I started noticing Min's odd silences. He would talk to people, laugh with us, and then fade away. His smile would falter, his eyes drift off, and he would quietly slip away from the crowd. At first I told myself he must be tired, just needed a moment to himself. But the more I watched, the more I sensed there was something he was keeping hidden. I thought to myself, don't read too much into it. He's been through a lot. Maybe he just needs some space. Yet, in the back of my mind, a little alarm bell rang. Min wasn't just all smiles. I could feel the depth there that no one else knew. As everyone began preparing for lunch, I stepped outside into the backyard for a breath of fresh air. The light breeze rustled through the trees, the faint scent of roses drifting from Mum's garden. For a moment, my mind felt calm. And then I saw him, Min, standing alone, leaning against the railing, shoulders trembling. His gaze was distant, and I immediately knew today wasn't just a happy day for him. Min, what are you doing out here alone? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, though my heart was racing. He looked at me, a mix of surprise and relief in his eyes. And then finally, he buried his face into my shoulder. He started telling me, piece by piece, fragments of a past he had buried for years. Addiction, needles, nights spent doing things he regretted but felt he had no choice, the shame, the guilt. He spoke of cold, lonely nights, the crushing embarrassment of facing himself, and the decisions he'd made that now filled him only with pain. I sat there beside him, letting him lean on me, feeling the tremors of his body as he cried. I didn't know what to do. I just felt my chest tighten. I felt for him, but at the same time, I was shocked. And then the question crept into my mind. Does my sister know all this? Should she? Should I even tell her? I felt powerless. I knew one thing. If I stayed silent, This weight would stay with me for the rest of the day. But if I spoke up, I could destroy everything. I was standing on the razor's edge between trust and responsibility when he finally calmed down, his eyes red and glistening. I looked at him and felt a pang of something I couldn't name. This wasn't just his story anymore. It had become a question of honesty, love, and judgment that I now had to face. I didn't realize that the choice I was about to make, whether to share this secret or keep it, would set off a chain of events that would completely change my family relationships. Lunch was still going on inside. Laughter and the sizzling sounds of food cooking, but in the backyard, we had just shared a moment no one else could understand. And it was in that moment that the spark for everything that would come, conflict, heartbreak, and regret, was lit. After that moment, when Min retreated back inside the house, my steps felt heavy, weighed down by the unspoken. The backyard, usually a calm place, seemed thick with tension. Birds chirped sharply, the wind rustled through the trees, and every sound felt amplified. I stood there, asking myself over and over, do I tell them, or do I keep silent? Every thought about sharing this secret made my heart race, but every thought about staying quiet made me feel like I was failing a responsibility I couldn't ignore. Min trusted me. He had cried on my shoulder, sharing the darkest parts of his life, things even my family had never known. I understood the rarity of that trust, but at the same time, a small voice in my head whispered, if Lynn knew, would she still want to marry someone with that past? I started imagining the scenario, Lynn, radiant in her engagement dress, everyone laughing and celebrating, and Min. Would he survive the scrutiny, the curious eyes, the judgment of our family? I told myself, I need to make sure Lynn knows. She deserves the truth before it becomes too late. Yet another part of me protested, you have no right. He shared this with you, not with the whole family. This is his secret. If you reveal it, you will betray him. I felt a knot of guilt and fear twist in my chest. All through lunch, I couldn't eat. The laughter, the clinking of dishes, the happy chatter inside the house, all of it felt like it belonged to another world, one I couldn't access. I wandered the yard, holding a lukewarm cup of tea, watching the sunlight spill across the steps, feeling both apart and trapped in the same family I'd always loved. I was simultaneously a member of this family and the keeper of a secret that could shatter everything. I kept remembering Min's eyes as he cried on my shoulder, the shame, the sorrow, but also the trust he placed in me, and I was considering breaking that trust. I told myself, if he knew I was going to tell anyone, would he pull away? Would he end things with Lynn? That thought made my stomach turn, but then Lynn's image flashed in my mind. I remembered her talking about the future, about wanting a partner to share joys and sorrows with. I worried that if she didn't know, she could be hurt later. I told myself, I can't stand by and let her get hurt because I stayed silent. Finally, a thought pierced through all the confusion. I would tell Lynn, just her, someone directly involved. Not the whole family, at least not yet. Lynn needed to know. The decision brought a strange mix of relief and dread. Relief that Lynn wouldn't be blindsided. Dread at the thought of Min's reaction. I found her in the backyard, where sunlight filtered through the trees in golden patches across the steps. She was on her phone, texting, but when she saw me, her smile lit up her face. Unaware of what I was about to say, Lynn, I need to talk to you, I started, my voice shaking. Her eyes widened, slightly nod with anger, but but with curiosity and concern. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. This isn't easy to say, but I had a conversation with Min outside earlier. He shared parts of his past with me. I think you need to know before it gets any further, I said, carefully choosing each word. Lynn was silent for a moment, eyes wide, not shocked or upset, but cautious. She asked me to tell her everything, and I recounted piece by piece. Every moment I had witnessed, every tear he shed on my shoulder. I didn't embellish or omit. I just told the truth that Min had trusted me with. When she finally finished listening, Lynn stood quietly, eyes glistening. I held my breath, and then she said, calm but certain, I already knew. I knew, and I still love him. I don't care about that past. I just want him to be happy, to feel accepted. Relief washed over me, but it was mixed with confusion. Relief, because Lynn wasn't hurt, but confusion because I realized my sense of protecting her might have been nothing more than an imposition of my own fears. I began to question, was telling her really the right thing, or just a way for me to ease my conscience? But the heaviness hadn't left. I started thinking about the others, our parents, my brother, thou, and the rest of the family. What would they think? Should I tell them, or keep this hidden? The inner conflict intensified. I looked out toward the yard, sunlight glinting through the leaves, and saw Min standing in the distance, shoulders slightly trembling. He looked at me, and in that moment I knew he was trusting me, and soon everything I decided would test that trust, as well as the love and bonds in our family. I sat on the steps, heart pounding, mind spinning. I wanted to protect Min, but also Lynn. I wanted to keep the secret, but also do what felt fair. And in that moment, I made my choice. I would tell the family. I would let everyone know, so they could make an informed decision about their relationship with Min. I didn't realize then how much this choice would change everything. It would unleash waves I couldn't predict. Lynn's anger, Min's pain, and fractures within our family. All I knew was that I had crossed the line between honesty, responsibility, and betrayal. Before I could prepare for what was next, I felt a shiver run down my spine. Min was standing there, watching me with eyes full of expectation and fear. He had placed his trust in me, and now, everything I was about to do would test that trust, the love and acceptance that our family could give. I stood at the threshold of the living room, my heart pounding so loudly it felt like it would echo through the walls. The room was filled with the warm chatter of family, sunlight spilling through the windows, the clinking of dishes from lunch, but none of it reached me. In my chest, a storm raged. I gripped my lukewarm cup of tea, hands trembling slightly. Every nerve screamed at me. This is the moment. There's no turning back. I had the secret. Min had trusted me, confided in me with parts of his life that even my family had never known. And now I was about to reveal it. I need to tell everyone something, I began, voice tight, trying to sound calm. It's about Min. The room went silent. Lynn looked up from her phone, curiosity flickering in her eyes, but also a trace of concern. My parents' conversation froze mid-sentence. My brother and his wife, thou, stopped talking. All eyes were on me. I could feel the weight of expectation, the gravity of what I was about to do, pressing down like a physical force. I told them. Every detail. Min had shared his past with serious drug use, the needles, the sex work, the shame and struggle he had endured to survive. I didn't embellish, I didn't omit. I just spoke the truth, that Min had trusted me with. Breathe, breathe, I told myself, even as the room seemed to grow heavier with every word. My parents were silent, eyes glossy but calm. My brother frowned, lips pressed tight. Those hands trembled slightly as she averted her gaze. Lynn stood frozen, eyes wide, but there was no shock or judgment in her expression, just a quiet, cautious attention. When I finished, the room was still. I exhaled slowly, feeling a knot of panic tighten in my stomach. I had done it. I had spoken Min's secrets aloud. Lynn stepped closer, grasping my hands gently, her voice soft but unwavering. I know. Min told me before you did. I don't need the family to judge him. The man I love isn't his past. He's the one standing here with me today. Her words hit me like a punch to the chest. Relief surged, but shame followed immediately after. I realized my so-called protective act was unnecessary, intrusive, and frankly, a betrayal. My parents finally spoke, their voices calm yet firm. We know Min is a good person, but this is his story, not ours. You need to understand that sometimes the best thing you can do is let people decide who knows what. My brother sighed, looking at me with a mix of concern and reproach. I get your intention, but you crossed a line. This isn't our business. It's Min and Lynn's. Let them handle it. Thou nodded in agreement, eyes reflecting disappointment, but not anger. The room was quiet again, save for the ticking of the clock. Each tick felt louder than the last, marking the slow but inevitable fracture I had caused. Min stood outside on the porch, just beyond the sliding glass doors, watching. I could see the pain in his eyes, hurt, disappointment, and a quiet, piercing anger. Over the next few days, the tension lingered. Lynn spoke to me less, careful to maintain her composure, but guarded. My parents tried to act normal, but there was an undercurrent of unease whenever Min's name came up. My brother occasionally reminded me, learn to keep secrets. Not everything needs to be shared. I realized then that what I thought was doing the right thing had actually disrupted a delicate balance. Min felt betrayed. Lynn was burdened with pain that wasn't hers to carry. And our family, once close-knit, now navigated an invisible tension that I had created. One evening, I stepped out into the backyard. Min was there, his silhouette long in the warm yellow glow of the porch lights. I wanted to approach, to apologize, to explain, but I didn't. He simply watched me in silence, as if saying, leave me be. That quiet judgment cut deeper than any words ever could. The story was no longer just about Min's past or my decision to speak. It was about trust, boundaries, and the unintended destruction that even well-intentioned actions can cause. Lying in bed that night, eyes wide open, I replayed the scene endlessly. Min crying on my shoulder, Lynn's mixture of love and disappointment, the family's silent tension, they all swirled together into a storm of regret and guilt. One question kept echoing in my mind, relentless and merciless. Did I do the right thing, or did I ruin everything? The air in the house had become almost unbearable, thick with tension that made every breath feel heavy. Min had all but vanished from the normal rhythm of family life. He didn't smile, didn't join meals, barely spoke to anyone. He moved like a shadow through the house, present but untouchable, listening but not engaging. The family could feel it, an invisible weight pressing down, threatening to snap at any moment. Lynn, who had always been the glue holding everyone together, now seemed stretched thin. Her eyes were constantly clouded with worry. She shadowed Min wherever he went, trying to protect him while keeping herself together. Every glance I caught between them stabbed at my chest. I could see the hurt, the withdrawal, the fracture my actions had caused. One evening, Lynn pulled me onto the porch. The wind tugged at her hair, and the warm porch light cast shadows across her tense face. Her voice trembled, but carried a firmness I couldn't ignore. "I know you thought you were doing the right thing, but you broke his trust. Min trusted you, and you betrayed him. He feels like the whole family turned their back on him." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I wanted to explain, to defend myself, to say I was just concerned for her safety, but the words caught in my throat. Every attempt at justification felt meaningless against the weight of her disappointment. Min appeared behind her, silent. His gaze was sharp but hollow, no longer burning with fury, just a deep, cold disappointment and solitude. I could feel his anger, but it wasn't explosive. It was the quiet, cutting kind that leaves scars. "He doesn't want to hear your explanations," Lynn said, gripping my hand, both shielding me and protecting Min from whatever else I might cause. "He's wondering if anyone in this family truly understands him." I stood there, paralyzed by helplessness. Every action, every word I had thought was protective, now became a reason for Min to doubt the family's goodwill. I realized something painful. This wasn't just about me anymore. Lynn, the family, all of us were facing a brutal reality. Once trust is broken, it's nearly impossible to repair. The next few days were an endless loop of tension. Min withdrew further, avoiding contact. Even Lynn couldn't coax him out of his room. Lynn stayed by his side, but fatigue and worry shadowed every expression. I realized then that my actions didn't just hurt Min. They were wearing Lynn down too, the sister I loved most. Finally, after days of silence, Min decided to confront the situation. He called everyone to the living room, his tone calm but firm. "I know everyone heard my story from someone else. I feel betrayed, not just by what was said, but by how everyone looked at me afterward. I don't want this doubt and judgment in Lynn's family. If you care about me, truly, learn to listen to me, not to hear it secondhand." His words hit like a hammer. Every syllable reminded us that broken trust doesn't just wound individuals, can fracture an entire family. I stood, frozen, guilt flooding me, feeling like a criminal in my own home. Lynn stepped forward, taking Min's hand, voice trembling but resolute. "He's not perfect, but he's the one I love. This family has no right to judge him for his past. We need to trust, not doubt and condemn." In that moment, I finally understood the magnitude of my mistake. My actions, though intended as protection, had caused a seismic shift in the relationships I valued most. Min still loved Lynn. Lynn still defended Min. But I had placed myself outside their circle of trust. In the days that followed, I started to notice every little detail, the way Min avoided my gaze, the subtle signals of tension, the tiny gestures of Lynn trying to normalize life. Each glimpse of them together was a reminder of the chasm I had created. I knew I couldn't undo the past. I couldn't unspeak the words, couldn't erase the hurt. All that remained was the heavy weight of regret, the fear of losing Min and Lynn, and the hard lesson that some boundaries should never be crossed, especially when dealing with secrets and deeply personal trust. That evening, I stood on the porch alone, watching Min and Lynn together. He leaned into her shoulder, his eyes still tinged with pain but softened, and she looked at him with a quiet, determined love. I was left standing alone, feeling the full weight of my isolation, realizing the biggest lesson of all: one's trust is broken. Even with good intentions, healing takes time, patience, and acceptance of responsibility for your own mistakes. After days of tense silence, the atmosphere in the house felt suffocating, like a thick, heavy curtain pressing down on everyone. Every step, every glance, every word seemed amplified, fragile, as if one wrong move could shatter everything. Min had almost disappeared from the family's daily life. No laughter, no participation at meals, hardly speaking to anyone. He moved like a ghost, present but untouchable, listening but not really engaging. The entire family felt the invisible weight, as if a single touch could set off a chain reaction of pain. Lynn, my sister and the backbone of our family, now looked exhausted in a way I barely recognized. Her eyes carried worry, fatigue, but also determination. She stayed close to Min, protecting him while trying to keep the family from completely falling apart. Every time I saw them exchange even the slightest look, I felt the profound hurt between them, and the guilt inside me multiplied. I had caused this one evening. Lynn pulled me out onto the porch, where the yellow glow of the outdoor lights cast long shadows. The wind stirred her hair across her face, and her voice was trembling yet firm. I know you thought you were doing the right thing, but you shattered Min's trust. He confided in you, and you betrayed that. He feels like the whole family has turned against him. Her words hit me like a punch to the chest. I wanted to explain, to defend myself, to say that I only wanted to protect her and the family, but nothing I could say would undo the impact. I realized that no matter how well-intentioned I was, the consequence was Min doubting everyone, including Lin. Min appeared behind her, silent. His eyes were sharp but empty, no longer showing anger, but a deep, piercing disappointment and loneliness. I could feel the simmering rage inside him, a kind that forces reflection, a kind that cuts deep. He doesn't want to hear explanations, Lynn said, holding my hand protectively. He's wondering if anyone in this family really understands him. I stood there, immobilized, facing the truth. This time, my mistake wasn't just my own, it had infiltrated every family relationship. Lynn was weary, Min was hurt, and I was trapped in a vortex of guilt with no clear escape. In the following days, Min avoided close contact with me. Even Lynn had to work hard to normalize things. I began examining every choice I had made, from hearing him out, deciding to tell Lynn, and then telling the entire family. Each memory pierced me with shame. I had allowed my judgment and lack of foresight to destroy a crucial trust. Finally, I decided to write Min a letter, not to justify myself, not to ask for a superficial forgiveness, but to let him know I fully acknowledged the pain I'd caused, and that I took complete responsibility. My hand shook with every word, afraid it wouldn't be enough to make amends, but I knew I had to try. Min, I know what I did broke your trust, and I deeply regret it. I'm not asking for forgiveness right now, but I want you to know that I fully recognize my mistake and take responsibility for my actions. I hope one day you can see that I never intended to hurt you further. Each day that passed, I worked on changing how I viewed Min. I stopped seeing him as someone with a dangerous past or risky lifestyle. I started seeing him as a person who had endured pain, who had learned to rise after failure, and who was trying to live a better life. The more I realized this, the heavier my guilt became, but at the same time, it helped me understand that empathy and understanding were things I had long lacked. One afternoon, Lynn came to me, her eyes still tired but softer. He's pulling back a bit, but Min is still keeping in touch with me. He needs time, and so do we. What matters is that you recognize your mistake and learn to see things differently. I nodded, feeling every word like a sharp reminder. Healing isn't just about minutes, about facing myself, too. I understood that I needed to learn to face my emotions, manage my judgments, and recognize that everyone deserves a second chance. That week, I began seeing a therapist to learn emotional control, confront my guilt, and realize that good intentions alone are not enough if actions are careless. I also kept a journal, writing down every fear, every worry, every pang of regret, and even flickers of hope. Each line was a small step in the journey of self-repair and personal growth. Min still hadn't spoken to me directly, and I respected that. But I realized that my responsibility was to change myself, live better, and not let the past dictate my actions. I didn't know when Min might be able to forgive me, but I knew I could no longer go. I had to move forward on the path to healing, one careful, deliberate step at a time. Days had passed since I sent the letter to Min. Each morning felt heavier than the last, like walking under a sky too low, too dark. I couldn't sleep well. Every noise, every creak of the house reminded me of what had happened. I replayed the moment over and over in my mind. Min's eyes, empty yet burning with disappointment, Lynn's hands holding mine tightly, trying to protect both of us. I felt trapped in my own mistakes, but I knew I couldn't just stand still. Healing would require action. Finally, Lynn spoke gently one evening, pulling me aside in the kitchen where the warm light made everything feel softer, less threatening. He's agreed to meet you, just for a conversation. Not forgiveness, not yet, but to hear you out. He's willing to give it a chance, if you can show him that you understand. I nodded, my throat tight, heart racing. This wasn't a victory, was a fragile opportunity. One wrong word, one wrong look, and everything could shatter again. The meeting was set in a quiet park just outside town, under the flickering light of a lone street lamp. The air was crisp, the night filled with distant sounds of traffic and the occasional bark of a dog. I arrived early, hands clammy, mind spinning. Min was already there, sitting on the bench, hunched slightly, looking at the ground. He didn't glance up when I approached. "Min," I began softly, my voice trembling, "thank you for meeting me." He didn't respond immediately. His jaw was tight, eyes focused somewhere beyond me, and I felt the weight of all the broken trust pressing down. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to slow my racing thoughts. "I know what I did hurt you deeply," I continued. "I can't undo the pain, and I don't expect forgiveness. I want you to know that I fully understand how much I betrayed your trust. I made a terrible mistake, and I am so sorry." Min's voice finally came, low and measured. "You don't get it. You think this is about you feeling guilty, about you fixing yourself. But it's not. You made me feel like I don't belong, not just with you, but with everyone. You made me doubt Lynn too. You turned the people I love into strangers in my eyes." I felt the sting of his words like fire. Each one cut deeper than I had anticipated. I nodded, swallowing hard. "I know. I realize now that my intentions didn't matter. The impact did. I've been selfish, thinking about how my actions affect me and the family, not about what it felt like for you. I understand that now, and I am ready to do whatever it takes to make amends, even if it takes years." For a moment, the park was silent. The only sounds were the leaves rustling in the wind and distant cars passing by. Min finally looked at me, eyes wary but searching. There was pain there, yes, but also a flicker of something else. Perhaps curiosity, perhaps the first hint of hope. "You need to know," he said finally, "that it won't be easy. I won't just forget or pretend this didn't happen. Every step forward, every word of trust has to be earned." "I know," I whispered, "and I am ready. I will not ask for trusty, will earn it in any way you allow." He leaned back slightly, the tension in his shoulders easing just a fraction. It wasn't a breakthrough, not yet, but it was a start. I realized in that moment that reconciliation was not about a single grand gesture or a perfect apology. It was about patience, consistency, and genuine change. We walked together for a while in silence, each step deliberate. The night air was cool on my face, and I noticed the subtle expressions on Min's face, the small movements that betrayed his inner conflict. The tiny signs that he was cautiously opening a door I had slammed shut. Lynn's presence in my mind kept me grounded. I thought of her unwavering support for him and the quiet strength that had always held the family together. That night marked the first, tentative bridge between Min and me. A fragile connection, yes, but one that held the promise of healing. I knew that the road ahead would be long, filled with moments of doubt and setbacks, but for the first time, I could see a path forward. It was not about undoing the past. It was about building a future, carefully, with respect, patience, and understanding. As we parted that evening, Min didn't hug me, didn't offer any words of forgiveness, but the glance he gave, a mix of guarded caution and faint acknowledgement, was enough. I left the park feeling a weight lifted, but also keenly aware that this was only the beginning of a long journey. I spent the following days reflecting on what I had learned. That trust, once broken, can be rebuilt only through actions, not words. That guilt alone cannot heal wounds. And that true empathy requires seeing the world from someone else's perspective, even when it's uncomfortable. I journaled late into the night, documenting each thought, each fear, each tiny step toward understanding. This confrontation didn't magically fix everything. It didn't erase the hurt, nor did it immediately restore the bonds I had damaged. But it opened a door that I had slammed shut with my impulsive actions. And through that door, I glimpsed the possibility of redemption. The chance to rebuild not just my relationship with Min, but my understanding of myself, of family, and of the fragile, delicate power of trust the night closed in. But for the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of hope quiet. Steady flame that reminded me that even in the aftermath of mistakes, change, healing, and connection are possible. After the meeting in the park, I thought I had taken a big step toward redemption, but the reality was far more complicated. Min wasn't going to open up easily, and I realized that one encounter could not erase the feelings of betrayal and lost trust I had caused. The weight of guilt pressed heavily on me, creeping into every thought, waking me up in the middle of the night with a heart heavy and a mind spinning. The next day, Lynn called me. Her voice was gentle but serious, tinged with concern. "He talked to Min. He's willing to try, but there are conditions. You have to prove that you've changed and that you're ready to put Min before yourself and the family. You can't fail." Those words cut me like a knife. I knew that personal change was a long and arduous journey, but I had never felt the responsibility for someone else so clearly. I had to learn to control myself, to listen without judgment, to act without seeking recognition. I had to prove I was worthy of a second chance, not for myself, but for Min and Lin, the people who mattered more than anything. That weekend, Min agreed to meet again, this time with Lin beside him. We chose a quiet downtown coffee shop, where the warm yellow lights and soft background music created a sense of calm, as if we had stepped into a world separate from the chaos outside. Min arrived first, sitting silently, hands resting on his coffee cup without touching it. Lin sat between us, both a bridge and a careful guardian, her eyes tracking every movement of mine and Min's, reminding me that this was the one opportunity to begin repairing the damage I had caused. "I know this isn't easy," I began, trying to keep my voice calm, "but I want to show that I'm trustworthy, and I don't want to lose Min or the family again." Min looked at me, still cautious, but I noticed something small. He was listening, not to forgive immediately, but to acknowledge that I recognized my mistakes. We talked about the past weeks, about feelings of hurt and fear, about how my revealing things to the family had affected both Min and Lin. I didn't hide my guilt. I spoke openly, admitting each mistake honestly, every detail, every moment. The conversation stretched for hours, tense enough at times that I thought Min might get up and leave. But he stayed, and I realized that for the first time in weeks, Min was considering trusting me again, even if just a little. Lin held my hand, her eyes quietly giving me strength, reminding me that this was a journey, not an instant result. I learned to listen to the silences, to read every expression, every breath, because I knew trust could not be granted immediately. It had to be earned, brick by brick. After the meeting, I began to change how I participated in family life. I no longer offered judgmental opinions or warnings about Min. Instead, I observed, listened, and found ways to support from a distance. I learned to respect Min's space and time, letting him choose how and when he wanted to reconnect with the family. I focused on actions, not words, just small gesture, each genuine smile. Each time I gave Min room was a brick in rebuilding trust. The following weeks were a series of continuous challenges. Some days, Min didn't want to meet or talk, and I had to accept the silence. Sometimes I felt frustrated, tempted to revert to my old ways, justifying, explaining, even trying to persuade the family to understand me. But each time, Lin reminded me, "You need to show Min, not everyone else." One evening, we had a short meeting with the family, where Min agreed to appear for the first time after weeks of avoidance. The atmosphere was tense and awkward. My parents, younger brothers, and sisters' eyes were filled with curiosity, doubt, and a little empathy. I stood by, giving Min space to express himself, without intervening or explaining. I realized that my silence and mere presence, as a supportive observer, were the best ways to begin regaining trust. Min spoke very little, but every word was deliberate, showing maturity and a determination to protect himself from old wounds. My family began to see a different Min, a man who had not only endured hardship but had also learned to stand up, face it, and remain steadfast. I felt Lin's quiet pride in her eyes, and I knew that these small, slow steps were forming a real connection. When I got home, I sat alone, writing in my journal and telling myself, the path to healing has no shortcuts. It is in every small decision, every patient action, every well-timed word. Min hasn't forgiven me yet, but he is listening. Lin still trusts, and I am learning to be someone they can trust again. That night, I didn't stand on the porch watching Min and Lin. Instead, I looked at myself, seeing a person who had made grave mistakes, now beginning the long journey of recovery, learning to love, to be patient, and to truly understand. I knew that, though many challenges lay ahead, the fragile bridge between Min and me was being built brick by brick, and hope for reconciliation had never felt closer. But deep inside, I knew the real test wasn't over. Min's trust, Lin's love, and the family's acceptance were still fragile. Every action, every word in the coming days would determine whether this bridge could hold or collapse again. I reminded myself that I could not fail, not this time, not ever again. The weeks following that coffee meeting with Min were a stretch of pressure like I had never experienced before. I realized that it wasn't just Min and Lin, but the entire family, friends, and even outside rumors that created a tense environment I had to navigate. Every time someone mentioned Min's past, or cast a curious glance, or asked an innocent-sounding question, my chest tightened, my heart raced, and my mind spun with helplessness and guilt. My family, though partly sympathetic, still displayed hesitation and doubt. My parents, warm and trusting of their children, now looked at Min with caution, as if weighing every gesture, every word. My younger brother occasionally made cryptic comments about the risks, about the worst-case scenarios if Min continued being part of family gatherings. I felt frustrated, but I also understood I couldn't blame them entirely. I had created this situation, and now I had to take responsibility for every tangled emotion. Min, meanwhile, started appearing more, but he remained cautious. He didn't rush, didn't defer under the scrutinizing eyes. Every time he attended a family meal or a small event, I noticed Lin's eyes always followed him, protective, yet anxious. I realized Min was learning to stand firm, but also learning to observe, to understand who he could trust and who didn't truly see him for who he was. One evening, the family gathered for dinner. The tension in the air was thick, more so than ever. Every gesture, every glance was tentative. Min sat quietly, eyes focused on the dishes before him, occasionally glancing at Lin as if seeking a safe anchor amidst the curiosity and pressure. I stood nearby, breathing evenly, not interrupting, not explaining. I knew any interference now could worsen the tension, and one wrong word could shatter the small progress we were trying to build. External pressures began to mount as well. Friends, acquaintances, even neighbors who had heard about Min's past started casting judgmental glances or asking awkward questions. Some were subtle, probing with harmless-sounding stories. Others were blunt, forcing Min to brace himself and hide his discomfort. I learned to remain silent, not to justify, not to defend, only to observe and support Min quietly from behind. One weekend afternoon, Min invited me for a walk in the park. No Lin, no family, just the two of us in the quiet space, dotted with couples and families strolling. Min walked slowly, eyes intent on the red-bricked paths, the soft golden light illuminating his hair, giving him a warm yet fragile aura. "I know things are really tough for you right now," I began, trying to keep my tone gentle. "I don't want you to feel judged or pressured. I want to show you that I have changed." Min turned to look at me, his gaze cautious yet curious. He shared his feelings about being judged from every angle, about the anxiety of attending family events, about the fear of being seen as dangerous or unworthy, even though he had worked so hard to change. I listened without interrupting, without defending myself, just listening. And for the first time, I realized Min was beginning to trust that I genuinely wanted to understand him, not to judge. After that walk, I began changing how I participated in family life. I no longer commented on Min, no longer warned or informed anyone about his past. Instead, I observed, I listened, I found ways to support from a distance. I learned to respect Min's space, letting him decide how he interacted with the family, how much to reveal, and when. Every small action, every respectful gesture, became a brick in rebuilding the fragile bridge between us. Not every day was easy. There were days when Min didn't want to meet, didn't want to talk, and I had to learn to accept that silence. On moments when I felt frustrated, I wanted to revert to my old self, reasoning, justifying, even persuading the family to understand me. But each time, Lynn reminded me with a glance or a gentle word, "You need to show Min, not anyone else." I understood that trust couldn't be given hastily. It had to be built over time through consistent, honest actions. Some afternoons I would sit alone, looking out the window, seeing the soft golden glow of streetlights reflecting on wet streets, and think, each day is a chance to do right. Each gesture, each word, each action matters. Min will see, and the family will notice the real change. And then, though the pressures from all sides didn't lessen, I began feeling a new strength within myself. I learned to stand firm, take responsibility for my actions, and most importantly, to make Min see me as someone trustworthy. I knew the journey ahead was still long, but for the first time in weeks, I felt hope. The fragile bridge between Min and me was slowly forming, and I could not afford to fail this time. Time felt like it was hanging by a fragile thread. Every word I said, every move I made seemed to carry weight, because one misstep could undo the delicate progress between me, Min, and the family. The atmosphere at home was still tense, but it was no longer frustration or discomforted, was a cautious hope, a chance for everyone to truly understand Min, and for me to show that I had changed. One afternoon, Lynn asked me to meet her at the small coffee shop where we had sat together weeks ago. The soft golden light streamed through the windows, mingling with the faint hum of traffic and the occasional laugh from the street, creating a space that felt both familiar and charged with anticipation. Lynn's gaze was steady, her tone gentle but serious. "You know, it's time for a decision," she said. "Min has endured enough, and the family has too. You need to decide where you stand, whether you'll support him, and if you truly want to be part of his life without letting his past interfere." Her words hit me like a mirror, reflecting every mistake, every careless comment, every tension I had stirred. Min, whom I thought I understood and wanted to protect, was now standing between me and the rest of the family, navigating his own path, but still needing a foundation of trust that I could offer. After the coffee, I invited Min for a walk in the park. No Lynn, no family, just the two of us surrounded by quiet trails, dotted with couples and families enjoying the afternoon. He walked slowly, eyes on the sunlit path, the warm glow casting a gentle light over him, making him look both strong and fragile. "Min," I began, keeping my voice calm, "I know I've made mistakes. I said things I shouldn't have hurt you and caused tension with the family. I'm sorry. I'm not asking for forgiveness right away, but I want you to know I'm trying to change. And I'll be here if you need someone you can trust." Min was silent for a moment, his gaze distant, weighing my words. Then he turned to me, calm but deeply emotional. "I know you didn't mean harm. but you've shown me that my past will always be noticed. I want people to see who I am now, not the mistakes I made before. If I'm going to be part of this family, I need to know they'll see the present me. Lynn appeared, taking Min's hand, her eyes both determined and tender. I've known everything for a while, she said. Your past doesn't change how I feel, but the family needs time and a chance to understand who you really are. We'll face it together, but you have to trust that if you show them who you are now, they won't abandon you. I watched Min and Lynn, feeling a wave of emotion crash inside me. All the tension, all the mistakes, all the external pressures, they crystallized in that moment. I knew this was a turning point. Min had to decide, open his heart, face judgment and challenges, or retreat and keep his distance. I had to decide to continue making amends or let the past dictate our relationships as we walked along the long paths. The sunset painted the buildings in warm hues, creating a scene that felt cozy yet full of hope. Min held Lynn's hand and glanced at me, a look without resentment or anger, only caution and trust. I returned it with a small smile, hiding both my regret and my determination. That evening, the family gathered for dinner. Min showed up, but this time there was no hesitation or tension. He spoke lightly, even joking at times, making everyone laugh. I realized then that trust isn't built on words. Alone it's built through consistent, honest actions. The curious glances were still there, but now they felt like opportunities for Min to prove himself, not threats. In that moment, I sensed a profound shift in the family. My parents looked at Min with gentleness, my younger brother nodded approvingly, and Lynn held Min's hand tightly, as if to say that patience and love could overcome any obstacle. I stood silently nearby, feeling both relief and anticipation. This was the turning point, the moment where everything could start anew. Built on trust, forgiveness, and genuine love. I knew the journey ahead would still be long, full of challenges and pressures. But this time, we weren't walking it alone. We had learned to face the past, embrace the present, and hope for the future. And in that instant, I realized, sometimes, the most important turning point isn't changing others, but changing how we see them, respect them, and patiently stand by them. That morning, the atmosphere in the house carried a particular stillness, as if the whole world was holding its breath, waiting to see what would unfold. Gentle morning light filtered through the windows, casting warm patches on the wooden floors and tables, creating a sense of comfort yet tinged with tension. I stood in the kitchen, gripping a steaming cup of coffee, feeling the heat spread through my hands while my heart raced, knowing that today could change everything. Min and Lynn walked in, hand in hand. Their eyes locked on each other with soft smiles full of quiet determination. The air felt charged. Min, after all the storms and the secrets that had been exposed, now stood before the family he had once feared confronting. Lynn stayed by his side, her gaze steady and reassuring, a bridge between Min and the rest of us, and a reminder that trust isn't built overnight but can always be rebuilt. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. I knew that apologies and past regrets were only the first steps. Real change had to be shown through actions. I stepped forward, toward Min, my voice trembling but firm. Min, I want to say, I know I was wrong. I caused so much hurt. I betrayed your trust, and I dragged the family into misunderstandings. I'm sorry. I don't expect forgiveness right away, but I want to show you that I'm really changing, and that I can be someone you can rely on. A heavy silence followed. Min looked at me, neither smiling nor angry, just an intense, still gaze, as if trying to read both my past and my present. Finally, he let out a long breath, his voice calm but resolute. I understand. Trust isn't given automatically. It has to be earned, step by step. And I need to see actions, not just hear words. I nodded, feeling the weight of his words. This wasn't punishment, it was a chance to prove myself. I realized that this time, I couldn't rush or pressure him. I had to be patient, honest, and let him and the family see my change unfold naturally. The family gathered around the breakfast table. Curious yet gentle eyes followed Min as he spoke. He shared stories lightly, adding small touches of humor, his warm smile drawing smiles from everyone else. I understood then that trust isn't built through words. Alone it is formed through how you behave, how you act, and how you consistently show sincerity in every gesture. Min talked about his new job, his small plans, and the positive changes he was making in his life. Lynn held his hand, her gaze full of trust, silently reminding him that love and patience have the power to heal. My parents watched quietly, their eyes soft yet full of hope. My younger siblings exchanged a knowing look, a silent agreement. We'll give him a chance. As the afternoon approached, the golden sunset spilled across the garden, casting long shadows and bathing the trees in warm light, creating a scene of comfort and peace. I stood on the porch, watching Min and Lynn walk together, laughing and talking, their voices blending into the calm rhythm of ordinary life, a life I had thought was lost for good. I felt my chest lighten, filled with hope in that moment. I realized something profound. Healing isn't just about apologies or reconciliation. It's about accepting the past, cherishing the present, and patiently walking forward together. Everyone has made mistakes, but everyone also has the chance to become better. Min was no longer the person I had worried about. He was himself, mature, resilient, and deserving of trust and love. As night fell, tiny lights in the garden flickered on, illuminating everyone's faces, highlighting smiles and warm glances. I understood that happiness doesn't come from avoiding mistakes, but from learning to rise, to make amends, and to love with a full heart despite the past. Despite the wounds, despite the challenges, that evening, we sat together, talking, laughing, sharing little stories, and planning for the future. No more distance, no more awkwardness or tension. We knew that happiness is built not just with love, but with forgiveness, trust, and the effort to change oneself. I looked at Min and Lynn, hand in hand under the warm lights, and silently told myself, the journey of healing is still long, but we've begun the right way. This is not an ending, but a new beginning for the family, for Min, for me, and for all relationships built on understanding, respect, and hope. And for the first time in months of tension, I felt it clearly. Every wound, every mistake, can be healed if we are willing to face it, willing to change, and willing to love with an open heart.